In Romania, the battle against corruption has reached a critical point. With the European Union intensifying its demands for change, the country's leaders are feeling the heat. For years, Romania's political landscape has been riddled with corruption, and issues so deep that it affects nearly every sector, from government institutions to the judiciary. But now, as the EU pressures Romania to clean up its act, the question is, can this external push finally spark meaningful reform? To understand the current crisis, we need to look at how corruption has become so entrenched in Romania's system. After the fall of communism, Romania embarked on a journey toward democracy, but a culture of cronyism and bribery quickly filled the power vacuum. Over the decades, corruption scandals have plagued the highest levels of government, with politicians and officials accused of misusing funds, favoritism, and shielding each other from accountability. This has created a deep-rooted issue that goes beyond individual cases. It's woven into the fabric of the system. In recent years, public frustration has grown. Romanian citizens are fed up with seeing the same patterns of misconduct and cover-ups. Massive protests have erupted, with people demanding transparency and accountability. Yet, despite some progress, the change has been slow. Anti-corruption agencies like the DNA, the National Anti-Corruption Directorate, have made efforts to prosecute high-profile cases, but they face constant pushback from political powers that don't want their influence threatened. Enter the European Union. As a member of the EU, Romania is obligated to adhere to principles of democracy, rule of law, and anti-corruption. Yet, Romania's ongoing issues have become an embarrassment and a source of frustration for the EU, which has repeatedly called on Romanian leaders to make meaningful reforms. Recently, the EU has increased its oversight and hinted at potential consequences if Romania doesn't comply with anti-corruption standards. The EU has made it clear that it won't turn a blind eye to corruption in its member states, particularly as it works to strengthen democratic institutions across Europe. But will EU pressure make a difference? It's a complex question. On one hand, EU oversight has proven effective in the past, helping Romania build institutions like the DNA that have exposed and prosecuted some cases of corruption. On the other hand, many critics argue that EU pressure alone isn't enough to tackle such a deeply embedded problem. Some officials resist change, viewing EU pressure as interference, and nationalist sentiment can sometimes fuel backlash against external oversight. For Romania's government, the stakes are high. Failure to address corruption could result in the EU taking more drastic measures, like cutting funding or imposing sanctions. And for a country that relies heavily on EU financial support for its infrastructure, economy, and public projects, such measures would be a serious blow. But it's not just about financial consequences. Romania's reputation and standing in the EU are also at risk, which could affect its influence within the Union and its partnerships with other member states. At the same time, this push from the EU is inspiring many Romanian citizens and anti-corruption advocates who feel their efforts are being supported on an international stage. EU backing gives legitimacy to their fight, bolstering public support and adding pressure on politicians to clean up their act. The hope is that this external influence will empower those who genuinely want to bring about reform within Romania. So, where does this leave Romania? The government is caught in a balancing act, facing pressure from the EU to reform while dealing with internal resistance. And for the people of Romania, it's a waiting game, hoping that this time, something will change. The stakes are enormous, not just for Romania, but for the EU, as it tries to uphold its values and standards within its member states. In the end, whether EU pressure can truly spark reform in Romania remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, Romania's fight against corruption is a battle that won't be won overnight. This is a long game, with many players, many interests, and, hopefully, a renewed focus on accountability and transparency. What do you think? Can EU pressure be the catalyst for change in Romania, or will it take more than external influence to overcome such deep-seated corruption? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more updates on this evolving story.